Hi, John.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, David. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Nice to see
But
your mug.
yeah, it's been a nice couple of weeks, very fun couple of weeks.
Yeah? Tell me
And
about
well, I've been really looking forward to this. But the opportunity to speak to, I don't know if you got a chance to check out the agenda and your fellow speakers, but I have had the best job in the world for the last 3 weeks. I've gotten to talk to just some amazing people and some amazing executives, with really great stories, and they were very willing to share very candidly, at the same time very casually, what they were up to and how they were doing what they were doing. But it's been really fun. It's been really, really fun.
David, I really believe that human beings feed on connecting and conversations.
Yeah, I agree. And whether or not it's I would argue that Zoom is actually more intimate than even a face-to-face conversation in a weird way. And
Mhm.
I've found that these Zoom interviews are, um, they really allow people to kind of let their guard down. They're not standing behind a podium in front of a large audience and feeling nervous or stilted or have to, nail these key points or that kind of thing. So it becomes very conversational. And because of that, it becomes so much more informative. That
Yeah.
that's part of the connection is that it's very informative. It's very instructive. So
Yeah. And also, you get to learn things about the people, right? And I think
mhm.
when you learn something about somebody and you feel a connection, then their words, you're more open to their ideas and their words, and it's more meaningful.
That's great. Well, let's get this rolling because I think it's going to be fun. So I'll do a quick slate of a three, two, one, so that Heather can cut out, and then we've got our audience kind of looking in and listening. So you ready?
I was born ready, baby.
That's great. So three, two, one. Hi, everybody. Dave Walker here. Good evening. Here from lovely, cold, wet Chicago. I'm excited about the opportunity to interview Jon Ferrara from Nimble, ex of Goldmine. Welcome, John.
Thank you, David. It's so great to be here with you and your audience today. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation. I think that it's through conversations, it's how we learn. And I
Yeah,
love to learn, but more importantly, I love to to give things away, to give knowledge away, to help other people grow. And I think through this conversation, ideally, whoever's listening finds a little nugget, dare say a little gold.
well, I've listened to many of your interviews on business TV and listened to your podcasts and watched your speeches at different conferences. And you are a teacher, man. There's no question about it. You're a great professor. So I want to give you the opportunity though to and I don't know if this makes it easier or harder to construct it because I'm sure that there's a lot of stories you can tell. But there's this evolution. You were there in the early days of CRM and you've watched it evolve and evolve and evolve. And now there's this new kind of way of thinking about CRM in the form of social selling. I'm not sure how different they are, but along the way, you've built businesses to basically respond to that evolutionary path. And so I'd kind of love you to just sit back and tell us the story of how the capability evolved and how really your business has evolved along with it.
All right. Well, I think that my journey as an entrepreneur started through the people around me who inspired me. And my dad was number one Lincoln Mercury guy in the country in the 50s and had the first Subaru dealership in California in the 70s. And my uncle helped invent radar and microwave at MIT in the 40s, and then had a waveguide bending business and was president of IEEE in the 60s and 70s. And well, he was a mucky muck entrepreneur, technology guy. And my dad was a sales guy, and I grew up watching the NASA, go to the moon with Mercury and Gemini and Apollo, and I wanted to be an astronaut, and I never wanted to be in sales, and so I went and studied computer science, and I was going to do that, and but I had to get my way through college. I had to get a job, and I got a job at a computer land store, and I started to sell computers. And I was pretty good at it. I sold the first 300,000 computers into Southern California corporations because there were no PCs on desktops in 1981. And so PCs were 55% margin in those days. So you do the math, each PC is about $3,000. And so I was making good money living at home and getting my computer science degree. But I learned a lot along the way. I learned at that computer line store how computer stores sell technology. And I learned about every software program on the market, every business program. There were only a few hundred. And even though I was making $80,000 a year working part-time in 1981, 82, which is, it's a lot of money. I didn't want to be in sales. So I got a job at Hughes Space and Comm and worked in aerospace for 2 years. And it was there I learned how companies adopt technology and implement microcomputer technology within the corporation. But I didn't fit in aerospace. It was too slow for me. And so I got a job at a startup in Boston that we selected for implementing networks at Hughes, and called Banyan. And it was there that I learned how technology companies sell technology, direct and indirect. And they put me in sales. And so there I was, and I had these things called leads, but it wasn't really a lead. It was a piece of paper with a phone number of IT people at big corporations in Dallas. And I essentially would pick up the phone and I'd cold call those people, and I'd make notes on that piece of paper that I had. And then I'd put my appointment in my day timer, and once a month I'd put my forecast in the spreadsheet. And that was SFA, CRM, contact management, etc. And I struggled. Honestly, I struggled.
Sure.
I had no process. And so I looked.
Were you using VisiCalc? I remember VisiCalc.
I was using VisiCalc, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
Profile, the old PC-based kind of programs. Wow.
Spreadsheet, maybe, and email.
Yep.
And so I knew there had to be a better way. I looked around for a tool to manage my contacts, to manage my pipeline, to do some basic marketing. I couldn't find it. I found a plugin for Symphony called Act, which basically allowed you to manage tasks against contacts for an individual. But I had a team of people. I had 15 people in my district office. I had people at the corporate office. I wanted to integrate contacts, email, calendar, and sales and market automation. And so I found, Snap for pipeline management, Telemagic for telemarketing, Act for tasks on contacts, and I found Outlook Express and WordPerfect Office for network scheduling and email. And I said, well, what happened if I blended all this together into one program? And it turned out to be a goldmine, and no pun intended. So I quit my job and got together with a college friend of mine on $5,000. We never took a dime of venture company or bank loans. We grew that over 10 years into $100 million a year in revenue. And there's some key lessons to how we scaled Goldmine out of that apartment in Canoga Park. Number one is we're first to market in an emerging technology space, which is network computers and notebooks and client server computing. So basically networks just started. There was no network business software. Notebooks were just starting. Client server computing was just starting, and there was no software to take advantage of it. Number two is rather than trying to sell it direct to the customer, we went after the trusted advisor of that small business, and that was the Novell reseller, because they already sold them the network and we had the car to drive on top of it. So I cold called all the Novell resellers in the country, and I got them to use it because people sell what they know and they know what they use. They started to use it and recommend it and resell it. That's how we got to our first $100,000 a month in revenue. And then Microsoft came in and they ate Novell. They basically built Small Business Server, which was NT Server, SQL Server, and Exchange Server. They ate Novell. And at that same time, my customers were asking me for a more scalable Goldmine. It was a D-based backend. They wanted something that would handle millions of records. They wanted something that had a better email transport. We were using POP as our email transport. And they wanted a more secure enterprise operating system. We were using Novell. So we basically built Nimble Goldmine Enterprise, which was, it required a seat of SQL Server, NT Server, and Exchange Server for every seat of Goldmine. And we solved our customers need to scale, our partners need to make more dollars on products and services on top of Goldmine. But most importantly, we help Microsoft sell their crown jewels. And if you could be the third-party solution to drive adoption of a company's first-party products, you could build a gold mine. And that's how we got to $100 million in revenue, is because Microsoft pushed the crap out of us worldwide. And it was fun.
It's a great story, man. I didn't know this about you, that you were doing the same thing I was across the country. I was selling Radio Shack Model 1s and Model 3s in a Radio Shack computer center in
Not
1981. And
what,
those were both fun days and scary days. It was the recession,
yeah.
but my claim to fame was selling government contracts. I got the county of Henrico outside of Richmond to buy 350 Model 1s and then a bunch of Model 3s for the city of Richmond. Those were the glory days of
Yeah.
moving iron, as they used to say. But
Yeah.
I'm you. It's always funny to hear entrepreneur stories that really are grounded in their own personal application, recognition of here's the opportunity. So walk us back a little bit to the opportunity from Goldmine into Nimble. What were you trying to solve with Nimble again, and what does Nimble do?
Sure. So I sold Goldmine in 1999, and I thought I was just going to take a couple of years off, and got a head tumor a year into that, almost died. And in the process of healing, I said, what am I doing with my life, right? Like, do I need to go build another $100 million company, or what's really life about? And Dave, I don't know if you've ever built something that consumed you, but if you want to build a company that's global, that big, it's consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really lost touch with friends, family, and to a certain extent, maybe even myself, by pouring myself into building that thing. And so I decided I was going to devote that next period of my life to things that matter, which it's foundationally, it's with your family, and then with your friends, and with your community. And so so that's what I did. I spent 10 years raising 3 kids and giving back to the community. I also took some time out to study photography, and I shot SC football from Sanchez to from Palmer to Sanchez.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I started to use social media in 2006, 7, and 8. And I immediately saw I was going to change the way that we work, play, buy, and sell. And I started to build my brand and my network back up. Because you imagine if you're a dad for 10 years out of technology, like, it just moves on. And so I started to build these connections and this brand. And I wanted to tie the conversations I was having in social to contacts to build my contact database, because I know the power of contact databases, having invented Outlook and Salesforce before either existed with Goldmine. So I found a tool called Hootsuite, which allowed me to track conversations in social in a stream, but it didn't allow me to take the conversations to the contact. So if you can imagine, like, a Twitter stream of a bunch of conversations with contacts is no good unless you can have historical connection to those conversations with the contact record, because I want to be able to bring up your record and see the history of interactions that we've had. And so I looked for a contact manager that was integrated to social. I couldn't find it. I saw that cloud-based, it was really G Suite was the only thing in town, right? There was no Office 365. And G Suite or Gmail, both the same thing, was kind of broken, because not only was it not linked to social, but email, contact, and calendar are 3 separate programs, 3 separate tabs. And so email and calendar aren't connected to the contact. So if you go to a contact record, you don't have the context, the history of interactions, and you have insights. Who are they and what are their business about? And so I said, well, shit, there's an opportunity here. And then I started looking at CRM. And so it wasn't about relationships, it was about really management reporting. There's a really sad statistic. There's 225 million global businesses, less than 1% use any CRM. And I think it's because you have to work for the CRM. It doesn't work for you, and you have to go to it to use it. The reason they call it Salesforce, you have to force salespeople to use it. Nobody in the right mind would use a CRM if they weren't beat on to use it, to do it. And CRMs are really more about management reporting as opposed to relationships. They're built for the managers. And I think that's why people loved Acting Goldmine, because they were built for the customer-facing team member, the salesperson.
Right.
And so I said, there's an opportunity here to basically build a team relationship management a la Goldmine that was infused with social, and I started Nimble.
Wow. I mean, that's a great story. And so as Nimble really becomes this kind of integration platform of social and selling, hence the birth of social selling.
Yeah.
So tell us about the evolution of social selling, where how it started in your world, and then it's evolved, and take us up to today.
You bet. So when I started Nimble, there was no social selling. People thought that Twitter is a place for a bunch of propeller heads to tell each other when they're going to the bathroom. Facebook was a place to hook up with your high school sweetheart, and LinkedIn was a place to get a job. And nobody was doing social selling. I started to do that, and then I built Nimble as a social CRM to empower social selling before the term social selling or social CRM happened. So I was really at the sort of the cutting edge forefront of all that. But then social selling in 2012, in 2011 sort of became a term, and people started to talk about it. And then there are a lot of sort of proponents to it, teaching it, and a lot of agencies sort of training it. And this is about the time that LinkedIn Sales Navigator came out in 2014 or 15 or so. And but if you think about the term social selling or social CRM, I think it's really past its prime. In other words, when the internet first came out, do you remember when there was eToys and eye contact and everything was E and I? Because the internet was so new. It's like, wow, it's this highway. And now nobody talks about the highway. It's just there. It's ubiquitous, right?
Right.
And when you turn your faucet on for hot water, you don't think about the boilers and the recirculation pipes and all the stuff in the basement and behind the walls. You just turn it on and think the water's going to run, right? Mm-hmm. And so when a technology is new, it's like, it's social selling and social marketing and social CRM, it's eToys and eye contact. But once it becomes ubiquitous, then it just disappears. And I think that's where we're at, right? And so social has been accepted as a way that it has changed the way we work, play, buy, and sell, that it is acceptable for you to use social in business. People thought that Facebook identities should be separate from LinkedIn identities, and you should never connect with business people on Facebook. But in reality, you go back 100 years, we were all a small village, and your brand was built on the promise you make an experience you deliver. And you brought people to your home and into the restaurant and things like that. And we've done that throughout time. And so social is just a way of life. It always has been. People buy from people they like, know, and trust. And so I'm not saying that the practice of social selling is going away, but the idea that it's somehow different than selling is problematic. I think that any salesperson worth their salt is leveraging social to stay top of mind with their customers, prospects, and ideally the influencer of the customer prospect, and to become a trusted advisor to those people, and to learn about people and companies before they engage, right? These are all key aspects of social selling. But I just think that if you're talking about social selling or social CRM anymore, that it's really gotten back to just basic selling and marketing, and the social aspect is ubiquitous. So it doesn't need to be talked about as much. But maybe it's because I live on a coast, and that maybe people in between coasts aren't as sort of up to speed with that. But if they aren't, they need to be, and they will be.
And no, it's a great great point. And it's interesting to hear it coming from you that it's, hey, it's don't get too hung up, particularly now, don't get too hung up on the concept of the social selling, that it really is about using the tools available to you to do what you've always needed to do, which is build a relationship. I mean, the irony is it is kind of the ultimate customer relationship management is you are physically and by every means necessary relating.
Yes. And the best way to relate to your prospect and customers is to become their trusted advisor, because nobody wants to be sold to or marketed to. And people don't buy great products, they buy better versions of themselves. And so you should be giving your knowledge away on a daily basis. And anybody that's worth their salt in their profession wakes up in the morning with their coffee and they're consuming more knowledge. They're learning about their space and their products and services. Um, and you should just give that knowledge away so that people don't see you as a salesperson. They see you as a trusted advisor. And when they need your products and services, they not only pick up the phone and call you, but they drag their friends with them. And Mae West, who was not only an actress, but also an entrepreneur, said, out of sight is out of mind, out of mind is out of money, honey. So the best way for you to stay top of mind with your prospects and customers is to teach people to fish. Because if you teach people to fish, they'll figure out you sell fishing poles. And I have a formula for that. It's called the 5 E's of social business. You need to educate, enchant, engage, embrace in order to empower your customers. And if you Google 5 E's of social business, you'll see the definitions of the expansion of the subparts of all that. Yep. But you educate with knowledge in order to enchant your customers, and you in order to empower them, and you embrace them to build a relationship. Hang on. Educate, enchant, engage, embrace, empower, right? So you educate with enchanting knowledge, you engage with people that respond in order to then embrace them as a human being, and your whole purpose as a human being is to empower others. And so one of the things I learned, or I realized, a realization that came to me when I was fighting my tumor 19 years ago, was that my purpose to be on this planet. And my purpose on this planet I derived was to grow my soul. And the best way for me to do that is to help other people grow theirs. And so we're here to pay others forward. And if you do that at scale, you can achieve anything you want in life. I mean, just Google Zig Ziglar. The more people you help grow, the more you'll grow. It's basic knowledge, right?
Right.
And so I think that if you, as a salesperson, shift your mindset from how many people can I bag and tag to how many people can I help grow, and change sales into a service, that you're halfway there to transforming yourself into a modern seller. And that's kind of what people are starting to call social selling, is modern selling, but I don't even know if I like that, but you know, it's a start. But I think we ultimately need to just drop the word selling.
Is it made more, have the last 6 months made what you're describing even more important, that approach?
I think so. I think that the more disconnected we get, the more human we need to be. Because I think that you need to connect with others in a way where they remember you. And the easiest way to connect with somebody is to do a little bit of homework before you connect. I used to teach my salespeople in the old days, when you go in somebody's office, look at their walls, look at the books they read, the degree of the school they went to, the knickknacks they collect. All these things will give you a clue into who this person is and what they're about, in order for you to share the commonalities with that person, in order to develop the intimacy and trust that you need to get them to open up about their issues. So as a professional, you can then solve them, even if it means recommending a competing product. And so, so I think that, and I call that the 5 F's of life, that we connect on the softer side, and that connecting with me on LinkedIn is like walking into my business lobby. You're going to see my business persona. But if you really want to get to know me, go on a walk to the beach with me, right? And you can do that digitally, right? So we connect on the softer side of life: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship.
Those are it's just terrific. So I see the impact, clearly see the impact on an individual salesperson in taking, the totality of this approach. You've
Mhm.
written a lot about the connection, or frankly disconnection, between sales and marketing. How do these principles flow back up into marketing, particularly marketing at scale? I mean, is
Yeah,
it
yeah,
how do you
yeah,
do that?
yeah. So, so I think that when you're building a company brand, uh, it's going to be more powerful if you empower your team to build their personal brands, which then helps build the company brand and humanizes it.
Hmm.
And so this whole thing actually rolls up into corporate marketing because I think that if you were to ask people in the marketplace, what does an Nimble brand stand for and why do you remember it? I think a lot of it is going to be because we've empowered our team to build their personal brand, which helps build the company brand.
Hmm.
And if the brand Nimble itself was basically saying Nimble is great and look at all the awards that we won, as opposed to the team teaching others about how they could be great, right? Putting the customers at the center of as the hero of the story. Um, and I think I said this before, people don't buy great products, they buy better versions of themselves. And that's what a company should be selling. And you could do
Hmm.
that best not by the brand, which is sort of inhuman, right? It's like
Right.
it's the people that help to build that brand. And so I think that any modern company today should be empowering their entire team to build their brand and build their network in order to build a company brand, which humanizes the brand and helps it scale. And as my dear friend Brian Kramer loves to say, it's not B2B or B2C. It's P2P and H to H, people to people and heart to heart. People don't
Interesting.
buy from brands; they buy from people.
Right. I mean, as an ex branding guy for many years who did branding, I agree. Branding is in some ways a cardboard cutout. It's not really. It doesn't have flesh and real. And as you were talking, I was thinking about how a member of ours, one of our first members, charter members, was they're based out of Portland. They're called Ruby Receptionists, and Ruby basically answers the phone on behalf of 80,000 small business. Now, Jill Nelson, who founded it, started it on the principle that the individual person who answered the phone for every one of their small business customers was absolutely not only a reflection of that small business owner, that she or he had to really intimately understand the personality, the style, in addition to the offering and the hours of that individual business owner, and really mirror it as best as they possibly could. But they evolved to really using that frontline receptionist as the feeder to everything that they did in marketing and everything that they did in sales. That frontline kind of fed back. So I think what you're describing, and here they are at 80,000 small business and wildly successful. So I think that what you're describing is maybe not as obvious as maybe some think it is, but I think in infusing those personal relationships into the quote company relationships with its customers is super critical.
Well,
And
well, in addition to that, if you were to Google um, IBM and um, just Google IBM and then space pound SocBiz, SocBiz, or some of the terms IBM uses, you'll see that IBM is not only sharing content on the IBM identities because they probably have a bunch of them for the different products they have, but they're also sharing content through their team members. And this is what I'm getting at, is that a brand isn't built by just the brand alone. And you need to be sharing content across your team members in order to truly scale your brand and storytelling, humanize it. And these people will then respond and interact with the people that connect with them. Um, but I do think that there is historically a tension between sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That marketing thinks that they make these great leads and throw them over the wall, and the salespeople don't do crap with them. And salespeople basically think marketing sends them crap leads. And I think that any salesperson that relies on marketing for the leads is going to fail, because I think that any salesperson, modern seller today, is building their identity across all the places where their prospects, customers, and the influencers of those prospects and customers are having conversations, sharing content on a daily basis to inspire and educate others to build themselves up as a trusted advisor, and then engaging in such a way that they generate their own leads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they do that, then the leads that they get from marketing are going to be much more successful for them, because their prospects will Google them. And they don't want to buy from Slick Willie. They want to buy from a trusted advisor. And if you're building yourself up as a modern seller, and notice I'm not saying social seller, but as a modern seller, where you've built your brand and your network and you've engaged with authenticity and you're there serving and helping other people, then you're going to be wildly successful. So the concepts of modern selling apply to individual people who are solopreneurs. It applies to people who work for other people, and applies to the company itself. It should be done strategically, top down.
What is the playbook on creating that top down kind of structure or process, or however you want to describe it? Where does it start? How does it evolve? How does it ultimately manifest?
Well, I think ideally it starts with leadership who buys into it, and that they become the guinea pigs for it, right? So let's assume that all brands worth their salt have corporate identities across the places where their prospects and customers have conversations. So Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. And that the brand is sharing content, right? And engaging effectively, right? Because if you share content and then you don't engage effectively, which means authentically and relevantly and humanistically, whatever, then your content's just going to fail. So let's say the brand's got that taken care of. The next step is to figure out some key leadership that they can start sharing content from those identities as well. And that's easy with things like, Hootsuite or Sprout Social, whatever, to share content across, various identities. And then you need to teach those people to ideally to respond. And if they can't respond, you have a team that sort of helps facilitate that. But then what you do is you then bring that down to the next level. And typically that would be probably across the leadership level in product and marketing, ideally customer service and sales. And so sharing content across those ones. But before you start the whole content thing, you have to have a conversation with these team members and say, why should you do this, right? Because some people might say, I don't want you sharing identity across my identity. Like, why don't you make me John at Nimble identity? I don't want my Jon Ferrara Twitter account having all this corporate crap on it, right? Well, that's a struggle in and of itself. But what you do is you sell it to them, right? You don't tell them how great it's going to make the brand. It's going to be making the person great, right? Because you might only have 20 followers on Twitter. And if you start doing what we tell you to do, you're going to build your brand within your area of expertise of what you're selling into the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, right? And so by building your brand in your network, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, you're going to be increasing your net worth, because your network and your brand are your net worth. So you need to tell them how it's going to help them. But ultimately it will help the company as well. So there needs to be a conversation, there needs to be some training, and then there needs to be some process around this. But this is being done by all smart companies today. And if you're not doing what I'm teaching you right now, then you need to basically dissect what I just talked about and build a process to do it. And if you struggle with that, go hire an agency. There's a lot of great marketing people out there who can facilitate a lot of this stuff for you.
So you were an early adopter, as it were, of influencers, and kind of saw the role of influencers before a lot of people did. I remember my first exposure to influencers was in the very first conference that we did in October of 2017. And Eric Day from Dell, who runs small business for Dell, got up and said, we have moved $2.5 million worth of digital display advertising budget into building a very robust influencer network. And everybody kind of went, well, what's that? What's an influencer network? And um, I want to ask you about what you think the role of influencers is, especially today, the importance of influencers, and how do you really engage influencers effectively?
So my first engagement with influencers was using the strategy of influencer marketing back in my Goldmine days by building my Novell network.
Mm-hmm.
So there I was in an apartment with $5,000 in the bank, and I don't even know how to advertise, let alone have the budget to advertise. And so how do I reach small, medium-sized businesses that need network business software?
Mm-hmm.
So, so I basically figured out how to get the Novell resellers to become my resellers, because people sell what they know. Hang on, I got this in a second. A little brain fog. People, basically the Novell resellers, if I got them to use it, then they would start recommending selling it.
Right.
And because they use it, they know they like it, they see how it benefits them, so it's going to be easier for them to talk about it. Plus, they have something else they can sell on top of the Novell network, which means more margin and services and whatever. And so that was influencer marketing, because I didn't have to pay them to do it. I basically just called them up. I shared with them my vision. I basically got them Goldmine, got them to start using it, and then they started recommending and reselling it. So when I started to build Nimble, there was no network resellers per se. I mean, G Suite and cloud was just sort of starting. There were no really cloud resellers. And so what I did was I identified the influencers of my Nimble prospects in and around the areas of promise of my products and services. And that is basically thought leaders in social sales and marketing. And I identify those people by swimming in the river and identifying content that was pound sales, pound social, pound marketing that inspired me. So stuff that resonated with me.
Right.
And then what I would do is I'd share that person's content on my Nimble identity, on my personal identity, and I'd hashtag it appropriately, pound sales, pound social, pound marketing, and I'd attribute their name. And then I did that enough so that new people that were looking to be better, smarter, faster at social sales and marketing would engage with that content. The audience of the influencer would engage with that content, and the influencers themselves would engage with the content, and they'd respond back to me and say, "Hey, John, thank you." And so I'd use that opportunity of that engagement of thank you to thank them back and tell them what I liked about their content and invite them for a conversation. And so before the meeting with the influencer, what I would do is I'd do my homework to learn about them and their business and as much as I could. And then when we got on the call, which is typically like one of these, like back in the days, we'd go to meeting, I'd ask them some questions and say, "So, David, tell me about yourself. What gets you up in the morning? What keeps you up at night?" And I just shut up and let them talk. And David, when you let people talk, they'll fall in love with you, because everybody wants to be heard and seen. And then if you listen, you'll learn ways to add value, and that's your job, right? As a human being. And so then I'd basically say, "Hey, David, that sounded interesting. Have you ever thought about doing this or with that? Or, I know somebody who might be able to help you with this." And at the end of all that, they're happy, right? And then they want to help you, and they say, "Hey, John, tell me more about yourself and Nimble." And then I'd share my vision about what it is I'm trying to do and where I want to go. And they basically start to use Nimble, and then they start to recommend it. And all of a sudden, we built the Nimble brand globally into like 100,000 plus uniques per month on our website with zero marketing.
And that's the stunning part, is with zero marketing, just by building those
And,
relationships. And
and
I know several of the,
we did that in 2010.
which was long before anybody was thinking that there was such a thing as an influencer. And I know several influencers who, one of whom introduced you to me, who absolutely adore you. And I think it's because of the fact that you really do take a very genuine, interested approach to, who they are, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and as you said, letting them talk. So I've leaned on you here hard for 45 minutes in picking your brain. Are there any last words of wisdom that you have, as I think so many marketers, and even more so many people in sales, are trying to calibrate their compasses, of where do I go? How do I can't go out into the field any longer. I can't go on visits. I can't do this. I can't do that. You hear a lot of that. What are your words of encouragement and guidance for those who are trying to, find their sea legs again?
Well, David, I started two global businesses in recessions, right? Goldmine started in the late 80s and Nimble started in 2008, 9, 10. And change is opportunity. Don't look at it as a challenge. It's an opportunity. When things are kind of quiet in a way, right? Which means that you should be able to cut through. People are sitting at home most of the day. You can get a hold of people. But for you to be successful, you need to figure out, what is your passion? What is your plan? And make that your purpose on a daily basis. And so if you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, read that book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple book. It basically says, if you can figure out what your passion is, build a plan to achieve it, and make your purpose on a daily basis, you can build a gold mine. And you got to take that plan and put it on your bathroom mirror, on your refrigerator, and say, what am I doing today to take one step forward? Because that's all you got to do. Mm-hmm. I remember when we started Goldmine, we said, well, gosh, if we could only get to $100,000 a year in sales, it'd be great, And then we get to $100,000 a year in sales, and it's like, there's another mountain beyond that. It's always sort of more. And so I think a big part of life success is figuring out what you want out of it, right? And if your goal in life is to make hundreds of millions of dollars, I question you. I question that because I've done that and it wasn't enough. And so why are you here? What do you want to achieve out of your brief blink of a nanosecond? And I think that if you could figure that out and make that your purpose on a daily basis, then you can achieve real life success. But it's an alignment to where you want to be and how you're going to get there. And I think that reading a book like Think and Grow Rich is a great place to start. But ultimately, I think that people are making mistakes if they think that money is going to make them happy. But I do think success has its ounce of satisfaction. And so just building that sort of plan and getting movement every day really feels good. And so what that means is you need structure around you. You need basically a task list every day. Every contact that you have, you've got to have a next step for. And you got to keep moving those relationships along. And to do that, you need a process, you need a platform to do that. And if you're not using a personal CRM, I think you should think about doing that.
Mhm.
because like I said, your brand, your network are your net worth, and you got to take care of your network and your brand and nurture it. And so, and today's CRMs aren't really designed for relationships; they're designed for reporting. And I think you need a relationship manager. So I would start by signing up for something like Nimble and start to put it to work for yourself and build a master plan for your life, even if you work for somebody, because you could be entrepreneurial within the company that you work
Right.
for.
Right.
Um, so
That's
there's,
terrific. I thought this conversation was going to be more the how of social selling or modern selling or the how of Nimble. And it's really been far more about the why. And I appreciate that about you, man. I mean, I appreciate that you really you got at the heart of the R in all of this, of the
yeah,
word
that's actually my next book, the R.
the R.
I think that's really what it's all about,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because David, this conversation that we've shared over the past 45 or so minutes, you won't remember what I said,
Right.
but I guarantee you will remember how I made you feel.
Right.
And that feeling will stay with you. So the next time we do connect, you just got warm fuzzies
Hmm.
because, and the reason why is because we truly connected in a heartfelt, humanistic conversation, which is so rare today, right? It's just so
Right.
rare today in our overconnected, overcommunicated world. And if any advice I have for you as a person is to try to be more heartfelt and humanistic and empathetic in your connections with others, because you don't know what they're going through, right?
Right.
You just don't
Especially now.
know. Yeah, just
Especially now.
don't know.
Yeah.
So try to be more present.
Yeah.
Um,
It's great
yeah.
advice, man. I appreciate this greatly. I appreciate you. I know our audience will appreciate. I know that lots of people will check out Nimble, but I hope they actually reach out to you and connect with you because it's a gift, man. I appreciate it a lot.
Well, I have one last tip for you. Google yourself today.
Hmm.
Your customers are going to do that. Your prospects are going to do that. And if you don't show up on the first page, you're in trouble.
Right.
So here's my tip for you to show up on the first page.
Okay.
Build a Wikipedia page. It's free and it's easy. You just got to do it right. You got to cite external articles that cite the information that you share about whatever you write about yourself.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then you'll show up on the first page and it'll box on the right hand side. Have a good avatar in there because the picture's going to show up. Google loves that shit. And bear with me. I got one more thing for that. Google yourself. Oh yeah. And the other thing is I mentioned that you should try something like Nimble.
Hmm.
Nimble's free for 2 weeks. If
Yeah.
you do decide that you like it, use the code Jon40, JON40. You'll
Hmm.
get 40% off the first 3 months.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
You
That's
bet.
terrific to know. I appreciate it. Well, again, much appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time tonight and doing this for our audience. And we'll, of course, make it available on demand through the end of the year. We've done this whole conference free because we wanted to make sure that we were giving to our audience as much information and benefit as we possibly could. And that's certainly what this has risen to. So thanks again for doing this.
Thank you, David.